Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll begin with roll call. Dr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Kashani?
Here.
Mr. DiTullio?
Here.
Mr. Lyons?
Here.
Dr. Mihalik?
Here.
Dr. Meyer?
Here.
Mrs. Misbach?
Here.
Mr. Moy? Mrs. Swope?
Here.
Thank you. Before we start, I'd just like to remind board members that if you haven't done so already, if you could please sign and return your acknowledgement and your principle of governance. I'd appreciate if you can get that to me this week sometime. That would be great. Okay, on to item 1.02, recognition of visitors. And we do not have anybody who would like to address the board. So we'll move on to item 2.01. And that is election of temporary chairperson. So at this time, I'll call for nominations for the temporary chairperson.
I'll nominate Mark Kashani.
Okay. Do I have a second? Oh, sorry.
I'll second.
Don't need a second, but thank you, Dr. Campbell. Okay, if there's no further nominees, I declare that Mr. Kashani is the temporary chair. And I am imaginary passing the gavel over to you, Mr. Kashani.
Thank you, Barbara. I was wondering about the gavel. I regret not heading over to DeWitt today to get it. So
I'll give it a tap for you. How's that? There you go.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. So let me toggle back and forth here. All right. So we are now at item 2. Hold on. We're now 2.02.
Correct.
Election of the board president, and the action here is to call for nominations for board president.
This is Emily real quick. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but the public school code does require us to read a list of all the board members. So I don't know if the board secretary can just read all of the board members' names. It's a quirky requirement, but I just want to make sure we do it before we open the floor for nominations.
Okay, sure, I can do that. Thank you. We have Mr. Peter Lyons, Mrs. Christine Misbach, Mr. Mark Kashani, Dr. Benjamin Campbell, Mr. Greg DiTullio, Dr. Matthew Mihalik, Dr. Carla Meyer, I'm sorry, you just threw me off. Dr. Mihalik, Dr. Meyer, Mr. Matthew Moy, and Mrs. Kasha Swope. Mr. Kashani, you can take over.
Great job. That was, sorry to put you on the spot there, but that was excellent. And then,
that's okay.
I don't think we've ever done that before.
It's a very weird, it's in the middle of the school code, somewhere you wouldn't find it, but I had a note to make sure all of our school districts do that. Not that anyone would know other than us solicitors, but.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Hey, if there was ever a year we would do something different and weird, it would be this year.
That's right.
So thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Okay. Now, nominations for board president. Do we have anybody who would like to nominate somebody?
I'd like to nominate Peter Lyons for board president.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Do we have any other nominations? Okay. Hearing none. I don't think we need to vote on this, do we?
You do need a vote.
We do need a vote.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then Well, I guess we'll just do it. Do we need a roll call vote?
It doesn't matter. You could do roll call or just a general vote.
Okay, then a general vote. All in favor for Peter Lyons as school board president?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well, congratulations, Peter. Once again, proud to have you as our president.
Thank you, Mark. If you could leave the gavel in my mailbox, you could get it.
I will reluctantly turn it back over to you.
Thank you, everyone, and it is an honor to continue to serve, especially a board as distinguished and as engaged as this. So you all challenge me to bring my best game to this, and I appreciate that. So very much grateful for the opportunity to serve again. The next item on our agenda is item 2.03, the election of board vice president. I can entertain nominations for board vice president. I will nominate Mrs. Misbach if no one else does. We can, as has been done in years past, also entertain a motion for a consent agenda. If necessary, I will read each motion with the existing person who fills or persons who fill those spots. So I just make that suggestion, but in no way do I want to sort of, avoid somebody being engaged where they won't. And I've talked to everybody I know this year coming in for our board one-on-ones, and the feedback has been very positive about existing roles. And as I always say, we really fill the need that's there. So if there's a place where you would like to engage more, that's always open, and that should always be the rule. With that, I will turn the floor over to the board for a motion or nomination.
Well, Peter, I'll second your nomination of Christine, and
Thank you.
then I guess I'll make the motion for a consent agenda for the remainder of the meeting.
I'll second that. I'll second the motion to consent agenda.
So, and please, please guide me, Ms. Mueller. What I would do first, let me say, because it is the vice president seat's a little bit different. Are there any other nominations for vice president? So I'm taking the other motion as a suggestion for now, but I'll stay focused on item 2.03. Are there any other nominations for vice president? Okay, seeing how there are none, Ms. Mueller, I intend to read a series of motions here and then take a voice vote on those motions.
That is fine. Yes.
Okay, so we'll take that suggestion, Mark, and I'll just sort of go through and read the following motions, and then we'll take one voice vote. As always, as with any consent agenda, if at any time a board member wishes for a specific item that I read to be pulled from the agenda and voted on separately, please let me know. And you'll probably have to speak up because I'm going to be reading on a different screen, so I won't see you raise your hand. We will vote on the following motions as read. Motion item 2.03, a motion to elect Christine Misbach as the board vice president. Item 2.04, a motion to establish the board meeting dates as listed. Item 2.05, a motion to designate the Post-Gazette as the district's newspaper of general circulation. Item 2.06, a motion to appoint Dr. Carla Meyer as legislative representative to the PSBA. Item 2.07, a motion to reappoint Mrs. Kasia Swope to a 2-year term as our AW Baby representative. Item 2.08, a motion to reappoint Mr. Greg DiTullio as the board's representative to Pine Parks. Item 2.09, a motion to reappoint Mrs. Christine Misbach as the 2021 liaison to Pine-Richland Opportunities Fund Board of Trustees. Item 2.10, motion to reappoint Mr. Peter Lyons as board representative on the Food Service Advisory and Wellness Committee. And item 2.11, a motion to reappoint Mrs. Dana Kirk as the voting representative, and Mark Kashani as the alternative voting representative to Allegheny North Tax Collection Committee. Does everyone understand those motions as I've read them?
Yes.
Does anyone wish to have a motion pulled from that agenda?
No.
By voice vote, all those in favor, say yes.
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 Opposed? The motions carry. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And I don't know where to begin with all those appointments. We're going to talk a little bit about engagement. The amount of work and homework that was just assigned for 2021 by that simple motion is tremendous. And we know, because we know how much time, engagement, and caring have been given to all those roles over this past year. So we go through that pretty quickly, but it's meaningful. So thank you. Item 2.12 is a discussion for the board around our subject leads and committee meetings. As a reminder, we've moved in a direction away from very formalized committee structures, and we encourage and we get participation from the board at large on our subject matter meetings, whether it be academic achievement, finance, buildings and grounds. We do still retain the idea of, subject matter leads, committee chairs in each of our traditional areas. At the reorganization meeting, we typically solicit interest and feedback for who would like to serve where. This year is not an election year, so we don't have any new board members or changes. And in the feedback that I've solicited from the board, I didn't hear any need for changes. And by all means, people should feel free to suggest those at any time, because we have a wide degree of latitude in this area. I will leave this open-ended for discussion now, or if anyone wants to send an email to board leadership, myself, Mrs. Misbach, Mr. Kashani, to make suggestions. But given where we're at and the feedback I've gotten to date, I would suggest to Mrs. Williams at our next meeting that we sort of reauthorize or republish, I think it's an information item as well, the existing committee structure as we have it. Thoughts or feedback are welcome.
Peter, I guess I'll just say, I remember us discussing last year, I think it was, to transition from like true committee chairs to the subject leads, with an expectation that as long as our attendance would hold up fairly well, we wouldn't have to go back to a different structure. And I think our attendance, if you look back over the past year, has been outstanding. And so I think the experiment played out very nicely. And I think more than in any time that I can remember in my 8 years, have we had as much participation in the committee meetings. So it's nice to see.
Yeah, I would add to that. It takes time for relationships to build and some of the background knowledge to get developed. And because of the design and assignment, for example, if we're having a conversation with Mr. DiTullio around buildings and grounds, he has some background knowledge developed so that whether it's Mr. Zimmerman or Mrs. Kirk or me, we have that continuity, which allows us to perform at higher levels more quickly. The concern would be if others didn't engage in buildings and grounds because they said, oh, that's just Mr. DiTullio's, but everybody stays engaged. So I think the strength and continuity really helps us be more effective with our work together.
I would just like us to see, I would like to see us institute a gavel in the committee meetings too, somehow. You'll work it in?
just pick it up, Mark.
All right.
Sitting there.
All right.
Just grab it.
I
Deal.
think we need to develop a virtual gavel, much like Dr. Pasquinelli's virtual page turning. I think that should be one of our objectives for this year.
I love that idea, Greg.
Sean, can you start working on that Google Meets add-in? It'll go right next to the raise hand button.
So I'd like to say, and mine's not along that line, but of the gavel, but that the documentation that we receive for the committee meetings is quite comprehensive. So it allows us to review ahead of time, ask questions if we need to. It's just very informative. So I think that really helps us all to stay engaged as well. As you know, these Google Meets or just started out as Zoom meetings and then Google Meets, that kind of helped a little bit. But even when we were in person, everyone was really made all the effort to get to these meetings, and it's been great to see everybody when we can, and to have everybody join in and be a part of all the conversation. So.
Yeah, I think another thing that's helped with it, in my opinion, has been having more combined meetings where committee meetings can be on non-regular meeting days so that the focus can be there. So when we go into the regular meetings, we don't need to spend the time in detail that we do during the committee meetings. So I think that's helped streamline it as well. So I like that format as well.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, the communication is what makes it work as well, Christine. I agree. So any committee head or subject matter head, they don't know things the rest of us don't. They might know something sooner. They might know more because they read more, and you don't want to know all the details that they know. But really, the spread of information is as democratic as it could be. Yeah. Any other discussion around committees? All right, our next item 3.01, is around the board strategic plan goals for a 2020-2021 school year. As we all know, the board owns a portion of the strategic plan, which is reprinted here in the agenda. At a high level, our objective under the strategic plan is to refine and enhance our system of governance through training, evaluation, policy development, and the strengthening of key communities. A component of this includes the annual board self-evaluation. At this time, heading into the reorg meeting, board leadership reviewed both the activities over the past 6 months, as well as the board self-evaluation results that were shared with the entire board in May and June. Overall, without getting into every little item on there, I would say that the board's level of engagement has been very high. We have, I think, enhanced our communication engagement with key communities. We've been trying in obviously a different environment than what was anticipated when some of these items were initially discussed as a board, but I think we've made good progress. I still think we could continue to do more. As well along that, I did make a suggestion to the board around a topic area for our mid-year communication to our families, to the entire community, really, focusing on recognition and giving thanks to the community for the tremendous resources that have been provided this year to allow our teachers and administration to fulfill our mission and meet the needs of students, but also to focus on, as Christine called them, the silver linings, which are really the things that have changed. The progress has been made for the better because of COVID-19, and that won't be taken back when we get into a post-pandemic environment. I could talk about both of those items separately for about a half hour each, but I want to step back a second and take the opportunity to get input from the rest of the board on these two things.
Well, I'll jump in here. I just want to say that this has been an unusual year, and it's required a great deal of agility of the school administration and the board to adapt to the demands that come up in a lot of the decision making we've had to do. An observation that I have is from the Mid-Atlantic review, there were some suggestions from there about documenting how innovation happens at the decision-making level, what the policies are, and how that the innovation processes are documented. And I think what we've been through this past year has helped us grow in all of those areas. We've had to be highly innovative in adapting how we consider decisions on shorter timeframes, dealing with unexpected issues, being able to communicate them with ourselves, with the administration, with the district, with all of the staff. And so I think, one, I just wanted to elevate that and mark that for all of us to acknowledge. But also, it's an opportunity for us to do some of that documentation, reflecting on what we've done, and it gets translated into these innovation processes that are really served up for us to address from the feedback that we got from the Mid-Atlantic review.
One thing I'm just going to elevate too is just the ability we've been able to be nimble and flexible. That's something you don't see in a lot of organizations, and a lot of times it doesn't allow an organization to respond in a timely manner. And I've just been pretty amazed at how nimble and flexible we have been this year to make well thought out decisions, but in a timely manner that allows us to sort of be ahead of the curve. So that's something I've just really wanted to elevate and bring to everybody's attention.
I'd like to make a comment too, because this marks almost a year of my being on the board. So I just would like to say that this has been an amazing year for me, because I've never been a part of such an amazing team. And this is really, I think, a golden standard how the board should operate. And I am just so impressed with the mutual respect between the board and the administration, and engagement of every single person in the Pine-Richland school district, because I think we somehow managed to finish it on the positive side because of all this planning and discussion and deliberation. And I think we also need to thank our teachers, because they are also like part of this crazy times. So like together we really make it happen. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And no doubt there is work to be done here and improvement to be made from the board in this category. And it happens because you guys hold your leadership accountable, and because you all individually make it happen. I did want to point out one item in here, which are the school visits, and the ones that we have had this year, they're different, man, right? But we had high attendance, very high levels of engagement, appropriate questions, engaged questions, detailed focus on what student experience was like, and they were connected to what we were talking about in boardrooms the past quarter or that past year. And that's what it's supposed to look like. And so we want to make sure everything that we do in engagement has that connection and that level of interest and frankly sophistication from the board. But that happens because of you folks. So I want to thank you again for that.
Yeah, I just want to jump in for a moment. I was having problems with my screen. I did want to say that I also, our team of 10+1 and SLT as well, and the staff, but that again, all the documentation and not just documentation, but the work that is done, I say behind the scenes that makes, when we have to make decisions, what we base it on, just the level of that is so high that there's not as much of a need to scramble for more information. And I just want to say thank you for all of that work that goes into, preparing, being organized. It's the processes that are in place. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other comments? This is very open-ended. You can send an email anytime, any season, any month, any week on this topic to board leadership and make sure that we are following through with these goals, or if there's suggestions for areas that we should focus on.
I'd like to thank whoever put together the board communication and engagement matrix. Seeing everything we do laid out there in just a year's time is really I didn't realize how much it was until it's all laid out like that. And that might be something we might want to consider putting public, or at least on the board's website for anyone considering running for the board, so they know what they're in for, and what's expected, or what we expect of ourselves and what we expect of people who want to serve on this board in terms of engagement.
I hope it won't scare anybody away.
Yeah, that was Rachel who helped to start this this matrix that we have, and then there have been several of us who have just kind of added to it. So it was easier once I found it was easier once we did have this the framework in place to then just start adding to it. So I agree, though, it is, when we first started thinking about it, it seemed like, we really, I won't say that we weren't engaged, but we just didn't seem to be doing as much until you actually put it down on paper. And then you see, or on the computer, then you see how much we are doing.
Any other thoughts? All right, folks. Item 4.01 is recognition of visitors. Mr. Stovener or Ms. Williams, do we have any visitors, virtual or otherwise?
We do not.
All right, folks. Item 4.02 is adjournment. Thank you so much, all. We'll see everyone next week for our combined meeting for December.
Thank you, Peter.
Have a good night.
Yeah, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Congratulations all. Have a good night.
Thank you.